Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 9th episode of the Soccer Scene with Sport in Limerick. Again, delighted to be joined by our usual contributors and analysts, Noel and Jason O'Connor. Noel, we're starting on a very bright note tonight, it must be said. A really good performance from Treaty and result, of course, against Waterford in a big Munster Derby win. It was exactly the display that we were hoping for.
Oh, definitely, yeah, and badly needed. I say a sense of relief as well around the Treaty club as a whole. After the Wexford game, like, it hasn't been great in fairness, and you know the first home game and the heavy defeat to Cork obviously didn't help the mood, and you know you're facing into one of the three fancy teams in Waterford United, and it certainly was a daunting task. And I thought they were excellent on the night. You know, things went their way, which hadn't happened really. They got the early goal. They dug in like we've seen them do last year, in particular when they get in front, play very deep and get everyone behind the ball and make it pretty difficult for the opposition. I thought, in fairness to Waterford, they played very well in that period and were able to mix it, that they did go short and long. And I have to say, I thought that Jack Brady was excellent on the night. We've spoken a lot about him as a replacement from Ty Ryan, and I suppose the biggest compliment I can give him, that it was a kind of a Ty Ryan performance where he pulled off 3 or 4 really, really very important saves at important times of the game to keep their noses in front. And obviously the sending off was a big boost, and the time it came 5 minutes into the second half, and then to go 2-0 up, it just gave them enough of confidence, if you like, I think, to see the game out. Waterford still pressed and looked very impressive with 10 men, created a lot of chances as well and got the goal back. But in fairness, in the last 5 or 6 minutes, I think that Treaty could have put a bit of icing on the cake, really. Had a couple of really good chances to make it 3-1, but I think 2-1 was a fair result. I felt even when Treaty were 2-0 up, that I think, in fairness to Waterford, the way they played, that they deserved at least a goal out of the game, which they duly got. But it was a great 3 points for Treaty.
Yeah, Jason, I was speaking to one of the goal scorers after the game, in Matt Keane, and he did say in one of his quotes was that it was a very, like last year type Treaty performance. I suppose that was a perfect way of describing it.
It was, Adrian. Look, it was a really good performance from Treaty. The tactics were spot on. You know, the 4-4-2, wingers coming in narrow out of possession and then giving width when needed. No needless playing out from the back from goal kicks. They went long, and your defenders looked like they wanted to defend. And when I speak of defenders, Mark Walsh and Joe Gorman in particular looked to defend most definitely. And it was a really, really good performance. You know, the benefits, I suppose, of that formation, we saw Charlie Fleming and Mark Ludden getting forward a lot more than we have in recent weeks. Both contributed with assists, Adrian, and that's Charlie Fleming's 4th assist of the season. You know, the defensive shape was excellent. As Noel said,
the happiest man in Limerick to see that formation change, Jason.
I wouldn't say I was the only one, Adrian. You know, that's for sure. We were all hoping for a result, you know, and they got it. You know, it really was. But yeah, it was excellent. I was delighted for them. The shape was excellent. They dropped in when they needed to drop in. You know, in the Curran and Red worked really, really hard. And they didn't allow Waterford the opportunity to play through them. I must mention Callum and Joe Collins. I thought they were brilliant in the middle of the field, holding that central area. And one thing that was noticeable for me, Adrian, when the ball did go to the Waterford front three and they had real quality in the final third, we could see that with Kavanagh and Junior and Phoenix Patterson. But when the ball was going into Kavanagh's feet, if he didn't control it perfectly, you had Callum and Joe Collins snapping in front of him. They turned over an awful lot of possession. They really did. So an excellent night. As no one said, a lot went for Treaty to sending off, but it was a sending off. There's no doubt about that. It was a poor tackle. And they scored at good times, but good value for the win. Like I said, with Cork, I suppose, the week previous, it could have been more for Treaty and it wouldn't have flattered them. I thought they were excellent, Adrian.
Yeah, it was a very good display. Noel, Jason just mentioned, obviously, the formation change. It went to 4-4-2. The team did look quite dangerous. And I suppose you could attribute both goals to the fact that, particularly even the Matt Keane goal, that you were getting more players into the box, and there was more Waterford defenders occupied. And as well, even within the Curran's goal, it was a great finish from Curran, and that's 4 goals in 5 games now, and 4 goals in 4 appearances for him.
Yeah, look, we flagged it at the start. He was a really, really good signing. You know, that, you know, for Treaty, you know, to come in, for a guy who has played in the Premier League, and we know he's a goal scorer. I think it's good. I think he's a guy that needs to play every week, and he needs to be in that kind of a flow. And when he gets into that flow, he'll score regularly, you know. But he's really a bit of quality. I was really impressed with the middle of the park. And look, I've been talking about having 2 guys that need to sit in front. I wasn't really too hung up on who it was, as long as they, you know, they did their job as such. And I thought that Joe and Callum did their job excellently well. We haven't seen much of Joe Collins this season so far. Saw him a few times last year, and he seemed to be in and out a good bit. And it'll be interesting to see how he goes, because, you know, you can find that guys who haven't played in a long time, they come in and play very, very well. And the trick is for them to do that on a more consistent basis. So I think if he can get a decent run and stay injury free, that they should be nice and solid there. I'd also say, and a guy who we haven't seen in a few weeks, and I know Tommy mentioned in his post-match interview about not being able to get Red and the Curran on at the same time. I think Connor Melody is a good shout there as a second number 9 as well, if you like. Very, very strong and physical, and certainly knows his way to goal, and is prepared to do the work out of possession as well. I know he's out for a week or 2 now, I think, with the concussion, but hopefully he'll be back soon. And he's another forward threat, and he's certainly an option to play as a front 2.
I know that Tommy is hoping that Connor Melody and Colin Conroy will certainly be available by the time the Athlone game comes around on Monday. Just on that note, Jason, in the midfield, I know people were very worried about the way Cork sliced through the Treaty midfield in the game the week previous to that. It certainly wasn't the case this time. I have to say I was surprised, and I know that there was 3 surprised people around me surprised as well that Joe Collins was the man trusted to play in that role next to Callum McNamara. But as you said, and Noel said it there, he took his chance. I suppose the big challenge now is, can we get a run of games in Joe on a consistent basis?
Yeah, it was very impressive, Adrian. You know, he knew his job, and that was clear even from Matt Keane's interview after the game. He was very clear on that everybody knew their job, they were well organised, and you could see that throughout the team. Joe impressed me last year, Adrian, in the games he played. He definitely did. I didn't know a whole pile about him before last year, but he never let the side down, and I think even when he came on this season, I think he came on against Cork, and when he did, he looked confident on the ball. He always seems to do that. So I wouldn't have any fears about persisting with him in there. Obviously, Sean Gearns will come back, and you'd expect him to come into the centre of defence. I'd be slow to take Mark Walsh out of there, I'll be honest. And looking at it, I don't know if I'm correct, but I think Callum plays a little bit better in the middle without Mark Walsh. It could be that they're a little bit similar in their play, and they go into the same areas looking for possession, and they look to do the same things possibly. So yeah, I'd like to see more of Joe in the team, and I think the setup of the team stop Waterford playing through the middle, Adrian. As I said, the 11 players are behind the ball when they needed to be. Cut off the central area, didn't allow it to go in there. When it did, they were pinching and snapping to win it back. And it was really, really good to watch. And I think if they persist with that formation, obviously the opposition at times dictate what way you set up, but the options are always there. You know, Noel mentioned Connor Melody. We also have Dean George, he can play up front. Jack Ara is in the squad, he can play up front. And you've Red and then the Curran. So that's probably 5, is it? Yeah. That you can pick in a front 2, and you have great options in the wide area. You have Joel, you have Stephen Christopher, you have Matt Keane. Dean George can play out there as well. So I don't know if that was a little bit tongue-in-cheek from Tommy when he said he didn't have people available to play that system, but they're there, Adrian, you know, and it showed the value of the change in the result.
Yeah, and obviously this week it's Treaty's bye week because of the odd number of teams in the division. Noel, they face Athlone Town though in the refixed game that was scheduled to take place in the Treaty's first home game back a few weeks back. That's going to take place on Monday evening at the Markets Field. the Monday coming. You know, it's a game with a chance now for Treaty to build on it, because Athlone, as we expected, have endured a tough start. There's a couple of subplots with obviously Martin Russell returning to the Markets Field, obviously not playing against the same club he managed, but we're coming back and playing against the senior side in Limerick. You know, if I have to say myself, you'd put Treaty as favourites just by the form of Athlone, but maybe we're expecting more of a challenge from Athlone than we might have faced earlier on this season.
Yeah, I felt that. I said the Friday that Treaty played Cork, I watched the Athlone Galway game that night, and I thought a bit more about Athlone, I suppose, than I felt they would. Galway won 2-1. They scored off 2 long throws, but I just saw a sense of danger, a hint of danger about Athlone. Couple of attacking threats up front, a lot of pace. And Dave O'Leary playing in the middle, and you know, he seemed to get on the ball and shift that ball into the attacking areas fairly quickly. Now, again, like, you're looking at the game on Monday, you know, does Tommy need to make a few changes? I think someone like Joel Costrain needs to start that game. Certainly stick with the 4-4-2, but I think that you need someone who's going to unlock the Athlone defence as well. And it's just kind of nuanced, you know, if you like, and you mentioned it before we started, like the difficulty Ireland had last night of breaking down Lithuania, because they sat in, got everyone behind the ball, compared to the match on Saturday night where they were playing Belgium, who were more inclined to attack, a bit like Waterford, if you like, and gave Treaty a chance to counter-attack. So I think that we probably need to get someone on, whether it's Willie Armshaw or Joel, in one of the wings, certainly to be solid on the other side, and obviously want to play that way as well. I think the game might be a bit more difficult than many people believe it will. I think they have a massive advantage now over not playing this Friday, because Athlone will be out on Friday night and then have to travel Limerick on Monday, which can be difficult. And I think the Treaty are certainly good enough to win, but they certainly have to think a bit more in terms of their attack and kind of carrying the game to Athlone, but certainly being wary that they, a bit like Treaty, when they play the bigger teams, they might be vulnerable to a counter-attack.
Yeah, Jason, do you agree with Noel's assertion that maybe one of the wingers needs to change? Because I know against Waterford, and you were one person who was profiting this, that, you know, if you play a 4-4-2, you obviously need your 2 wingers narrow and obviously very willing to defend. And I suppose that's obvious against a team like Waterford. But do you think that maybe one of the wingers now, you bring on the likes of a Joel Costrain or a Willie Armshaw, when you know that Athlone are probably going to be a bit more defensive and cautious?
Well, I'd definitely stick with Matt Keane. He's kind of the template for me to play in wide areas in that formation. And it's probably a toss-up then really between Stephen Christopher and Joel Costrain, who starts the game. They're much of a likeness, really, Adrian. For me, they play similar. They're more attack-minded. And I suppose you can't have that on both sides, but with Matt Keane on one side, he certainly overcompensates. He does the world of work. So I'm not sure. Stephen Christopher or Joel is a toss-up, really, for me. It's a very, very important game, though. There's no doubt about that. In relation to the table, I suppose, Adrian, the win will keep Treaty in them playoff spots, and that's where they need to be. Noel quite rightly said that Atlone's performances have certainly improved, you know, as we kind of predicted they would under Martin Russell. They were on the verge of a win, really, for a few weeks. It was 2-1 to Wexford, 3-2 to Cove, and then 2-1 to Galway. So we're very, very close in them games prior, obviously, to the 4-1 defeat to Cork last week. But I'm sure Martin Russell won't read too much into that. And if he is to take a positive from it, I suppose it's that they managed to score against Cork, which isn't easy to do. The disciplinary record hasn't been great, Adrian. With 3 red cards already. Aaron Connolly saw a red there in the Cork defeat. And as Noel said, they have a tough game against Bray on Friday. And that's more good news for Treaty, really. It gives Tommy to look at him an opportunity to look closer, I suppose, at Athlone. And he'll need to. He can't take it for granted, Adrian. He certainly can't. No one mentioned O'Leary. They have slinger men, obviously, as well, and Glenn McCauley. And I think it's success out again that Noel is referring to is causing a lot of people problems in the final third for Athlone. So they have threats. They can't be taken lightly, Adrian. They can't be underestimated. But I'd certainly be expecting Treaty to win the game.
And I know Carlton Ubenuzo, who's with Galway, has made a decent start to his time with Athlone as well. It must be said. Noel, you mentioned about the wingers there, and from talking to Treaty supporters at the game the other night, there's some of them that are wondering maybe will Willie Armshaw be given a go from the start? What's your own opinion on that? Because I know there has been a clamour, and Tommy has been quick in the past to say that maybe he doesn't think that Willie Armshaw has the stamina to go from the start at this level. Do you think that he could be knocking on the door for a start?
Yeah, I think so. And in fairness to Tommy, I think he has a point. I think, he made some huge impact last season in a lot of games, but it was coming on, in the last 20 minutes in terms of creating goals and scoring goals. Scored a couple of spectacular goals and very important ones as well. And the couple of games he started, it didn't work out that way. I suppose he's there now for a year. So I'm sure that he wants to push on and get a few starts. And maybe Monday night is a good opportunity to start him, particularly with the options. And Jason has touched on the options that Treaty have. You can certainly start him. And if things aren't working out, you do have the option for a Stephen Christopher or a Joel Custrain. But I'm sure they'll all be chopping at the bit. And look, I feel myself, I wouldn't be as impressed with Stephen Christopher as other people may be. And I just feel that you need to get someone on who's creating goals or scoring goals. And I think Joel has shown that he's capable of doing that. And actually, Willie Armshaw has shown that as well.
Yeah, I know that Joel Custrain, so would say maybe unfairly dropped. I know he had a decent start to the season in fairness, so he'll definitely be chomping at the bit, as Noel said. I suppose it's that time of the evening, gentlemen, as well, where we've got to look at the other games in the division. Tonight, what we're going to do is split it up into more detail with 2 games for Jason, 2 games for Noel, but we will be getting your predictions, both of you, on camera, just in case there's any snaky, people think there's any snaky business going on here. There isn't. Must be said. But Jason, I know you're now on 28 points, but Noel O'Connor has closed in a tiny bit on 26. I'm back myself, back in the relegation drop zone on 22 points, well behind. So we keep that as quiet as we can. But that's where we feel right now. I suppose the first game we'll go for, Jason, is Galway versus Cove. Galway lost their first game of the season against Longford. That was one, I suppose, that was going to be a sticky one for Galway, it must be said, especially, Longford at home. We're expecting it to be relatively strong. They lost 2-1. I have went for Galway to bounce back here with a win. What's your own thoughts?
Yeah, I would expect Galway to bounce back quickly, Adrian. It's a difficult place to go, Longford. We kind of said that in our predictions, and they're turning over a few results. There's no doubt about that. First defeat for Galway, I kind of predicted a draw. I'm sure they would have been happy with a draw coming out of there. But look, I think Cove now are in that area of the table where we expect them to be, Adrian. They make life awkward for people in St. Colman's Park. But away from home and trying to maintain that consistency, I suppose, that they've lacked over a couple of seasons now, and it goes back to the Treaty draw there. That's the only draw Cove have, and I suppose that's why I said at the time I felt it was 2 points dropped. But I would expect Galway to bounce back. They can't afford to lose any more ground, especially with the form Cork are in. So I'll go for a Galway win there, Adrian.
Yeah, Noel, what's your own thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree there with Jason. I think that Galway will bounce back and they'll be too strong for Cove.
Yeah, and Noel, just to stick with yourself, one of the heavier hitter games, as we call them, Waterford, they're hosting Longford, who will be bouncing off the back of a big win against Galway as well. Waterford now, of course, have lost 2 on the bounce within 3 weeks. I know Ian Morris cut a very frustrated figure last week, and in fairness to his team, they came close to snatching a draw on a couple of occasions. But as you said, Treaty did have another good few chances as well on top of that. This one, harder to call, it must be said. I have actually went for a draw myself. I think Longford may get a draw in Waterford. What do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking that myself, that it might be a draw, but I'm just thinking, and while we did talk about Longford and their home form being strong, I think that Longford, their home form being strong, I just feel that Waterford, out of pure necessity, will probably get a win. I'm sure Ian Morris will be disappointed at his own selection that he didn't start Wordsworth in the game. I think he had made a massive impact when he came on and scored and could have got an equaliser. and certainly his physical presence was important. But I think, the fact that Waterford are at home and their need is really, really strong, I think they'll probably do enough to get a win there.
I was actually very disappointed with myself. I looked back and saw that it was Eddie Nolan scored the goal, and I had people convincing me in the ground it was Anthony Wordsworth scored that goal last week. So I'm very disappointed that I bowed to that pressure. But we'll say, Jason, just to move on now, Wexford and Cork. Cork are absolutely flying it. I know that you'll probably be delighted yourself. You went with Cork to win the league. They are looking fairly strong now at the moment, although obviously very early days, it must be said. Going to Wexford, what's your own vision of how this game will go?
Yeah, on the crest of a wave, Adrian. There's no doubt. Confidence is sky high. I think the defence really is the rock that these results are being built on for Cork. Gilchrist and Hackney in particular, and they've only conceded 2 goals, Adrian. I think that is the base from which they're springing from, and they should be able to cope, I suppose, with the attacking prowess of Corcoran and Davis, and they'll probably play 2 up front. Wexford, they've been a breath of fresh air this season for me, really attacking. Very good to watch. There's always goals in their games, but I just think the quality that Cork have is beginning to look too much, for this division. A little bit like Shelburne last year. I know it's early days, Adrian, but Barry Coffey, Aaron Bulger, Keane Murphy in particular, very, very impressive going forward. When you combine that with that defensive record that I just spoke about, it explains why they're becoming big favourites. I'd expect them to win the game, most definitely, and maintain their good form.
I almost left you off the hook, Jason. Waterford and Longford.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Noel. I think the need is so strong for Waterford that they'll need a result, especially at home. And I take his point on Wordsworth, and they brought on Louis Britton as well, who's good for a goal for them. So I'd expect a few changes from Ian Morris, and I think Waterford will win that game, Adrian. Yeah,
and Noel on Wexford and Cork.
Yeah, so it's a big test for Wexford, and they are a breath of fresh air, and they've really improved. I mean, it's night and day, their form compared to last year, and obviously this is a real acid test for them. And look, if they could get anything out of the game, it would be a massive confidence boost to them. But I can see the Cork show coming on stuck in this game, and while there probably will be a few goals in it, I think that Cork will manage to get more than Wexford, and it'll be a Cork victory.
Yeah, Noel, we finally have Athlone versus Bray. I've went for a Bray win here again. What about yourself?
Yeah, again, we're talking about Athlone and the matchup. I think they'll probably prioritise the home game. They've been close enough to result. Bray have been patchy enough really overall, and I'm going to go for a draw here.
A draw. That's an interesting call. Can Athlone take a decent result into the game with Treaty next week? Jason, are you going to be in agreement with that?
Not. I'm going to go for a Bray victory, Adrian. I just think it's a little bit too early for Athlone to be turning over the likes of Bray. If they do pick up a point, they'll obviously have confidence coming to the Markets Field and on Monday. I'd be hoping for 2 reasons that Bray turn them over, that they won't be as confident coming to visit Treaty, and obviously I'll keep that lead at the top of our table. I just think Bray have the quality, Adrian, that could be enough to get them the result.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I'm not really a Mystic Meg. I was almost there. I decided to predict what you would predict beforehand, and Noel O'Connor's after throwing me here with the Athlone and Bray draw. Otherwise, I had a clean sweep, 7 out of 8, unfortunately. On that one, we'll see how that goes for next week. I suppose, Jason, just to stick with yourself as well, we're going to switch our attention to junior football. And we know we're in absolute silly season, it must be said, at junior level, particularly this year, Jason, because you had COVID call-offs, you had weather postponements. So even tonight, for instance, the Divisional Cup draws from 1A down were only taking place tonight, and we're at the start of April, which is almost unheard of in previous seasons. It shows how long is left. 8 league games for a lot of teams. I suppose maybe get a small word from you on the big game, with Pike Rovers travelling to Waterford to play Burnie FC in the quarter-final of the FAI. But I suppose another way, I must say as well, hats off, in my opinion, to the LDMC so far in the change in league format, because I have to say the bottom 6 of the division is really hotting up. Everyone seems to be beating each other. It must be said there's a bit of a 3-horse race for the top of it. Kilmallock still have a chance to get out at the bottom. And as well as that, you have Ballinanty sneaking back up now and have Fairview to play twice, Pike to play twice. So it has been interesting.
It has, Adrian. I was a big advocate for it. It keeps teams in the bottom 6, I suppose, more competitive, more to play for. And a lot of people have forgotten there's an actual trophy to play for if you finish top of that bottom 6. And it's interesting, you look at the top 6 and the team in 6th has probably less points than the team now in 7th and 8th possibly. Janesborough doing really well. Gary Kelly is in there doing the coaching and the organisation, and he's someone I'm very familiar with and I've worked with a lot over the years, and he's a fantastic coach. And since he's come in, Adrian, the results and performances have certainly improved. There's no doubt about that. Did a big win against Kuna. So congrats to Gary on that. He's doing an excellent job. And it's very, very close for that top of the top 6. You rightly said, Bella fighting their way back into that title race. But look, Pike and Fairview, it'll be a battle for that title for me between the two of them. And I said it a couple of weeks ago, especially with Pike's game against Hibernian the weekend. The Pike committee, the Pike supporters, Adrian, are used to winning. You know, they take a league title, there's no doubt about that. But I'm sure they'd love to get their hands on another FEI. A long time since they won one. And look, there will be favourites going into the game for me. There will, maybe that's a bit biased. The Waterford contingent might be too happy, but look, Pike are a fantastic club, some excellent players, and we wish them all the best.
I do expect Pike to see Pike in the semi-final as well. And I suppose speaking of the quarter-final draw in the Munster Junior, just to mention it as well, you have an all-Limerick clash with Fairview Rangers and Broadford in that, which should be an interesting tie to be played in a few weeks. And then also as well, you have Ashley Anacotty, who maybe feel like they got the raw end of the stick playing St. Michael's away. But, you know, you're going to get a tough, at that stage of competition, you're going to have a tough competition no matter where you have to go. So that's for sure. Noel, just to finish on a bright note, the Irish international team, I know there was a lot of frustrated heads coming into the 96th minute last night because it was 0-0 at home to Lithuania. As you said, Lithuania defended deep, frustrated. Ireland, Tripart came up with the winner. But overall, I suppose, they were now 8 games unbeaten. It was a fairly successful few days and a successful, international break overall. A draw with Belgium, the number 1 ranked team, even though, you know, they didn't bring their host of star names. But I suppose if you look back maybe a year ago, we couldn't have foreseen this.
I know it's been good, and it was important after that they came back and continued, say, the work, if you like, that had been done since the last international was done. I think, in fairness, Troy Parrott, fantastic finish. The venom and power he got in his strike. And I think the last big game, and look, it wouldn't have been a disaster if they didn't win last night. It was great that they did, but just reminded me of that, you know, when they were waiting for that first win, it was Troy Parrott that got him going outside in Andorra when they went to goal down as well. So certainly it's a bit of a lucky charm for Stephen Kenny, I think. And look, he's still only a young chap, and hopefully he actually drives on from here. He's played 34 games now with his club this season and scored a few goals and seems to have his head in the right place, which is obviously very important if he wants to reach his real potential. And he's a guy that certainly has a lot of potential.
Yeah, certainly the case. And my thanks once again to Jason and Noel O'Connor this evening for joining us on the Soccer Scene. We'll have a packed show next week to bring you for the 10th episode once we reach the double figures, as we'll digest the Treaty United and Athlone game and obviously the other first division games. But we'll also preview Treaty versus Bray, as well as digesting some of the junior soccer news as well next week. So we hope you can join us for that too. And thank you once again for listening in.
Preview.